windows were missed multiple times. So this is almost the equivalent of scheduling a Pure Later or FedEx pickup and you not putting the product out for Pure Later or FedEx, but obviously on a grand scale.
Okay. Look more like on the yellow chair, you know what I mean?
Do I?
Blonde hair.
All right.
It's rolling.
3, 2, 1.
Colin.
Jan?
A little bit awkward here in Canada.
A little bit. Today's date of filming is September 14th, the day after September 13th.
Yeah, so if you're in US, if you're in Europe, you're chilling, right? You're opening your retail boosters, you're going to launch events, you're enjoying the global launch of Altered, and not here.
Yeah, and if you listen really, really closely, you hear a tiny violin playing in the background. Very, very, very sad day. It's a cloudy day in Canada. Definitely quiet. No one's playing Altered right now. We actually intended our Altered launch event to be today, and we had to break it to our community that, guys, guess what? The delay is happening. We're not having a launch event.
Not just that, a double delay.
Double delay.
So first we pushed it out a week. They were saying it was going to be slightly delayed. And we're like, okay, we'll push it out a week.
Which translates to slight disappointment.
Yep. But then you got to do it again and push it out another 2 weeks after that. So we're looking at October 4th.
Yeah, October 4th. And I know you commented on our Discord because let me tell you, our folks on the Discord, not the happiest. They've got a little bit of discontentment is starting to rise. Morale, all-time lows. People are disappointed. And I think more importantly, we're a little bit disappointed. Surprised even, because if you checked out our first episode of Diving into Altered.
Yeah, man, we boosted up Equinox.
We boosted. We, at noon, +1 Equinox, thinking, believing, really committing to the fact that, maybe they had their supply chain operations nailed down. Well, you know what? They did. For 2/3 of the countries, well, I know Europe is not a country, but let's just say region.
Probably majority of the market, you could say, did get their
Probably 95%
product,
of the market.
Yeah, I think I was hearing some delays in Brazil. I cannot confirm, but maybe some specific markets, which at the end of the day, they did hit the most important markets in Europe, obviously, which is not hard to deliver on because they're from France, but
Yeah.
US, huge market, especially compared to Canada.
Yeah.
So I think, from one perspective, not a huge impact in the grand scheme of things for Canada to be slightly delayed. I think it would have been a lot worse if that did happen for the US in terms of an overall impact and the sheer number of people that would have been disappointed and kind of the main Altered Discord going into uproar. If that was delayed in US, that would have been a lot bigger news because it's in Canada. I don't think too many people are talking about it, but still disappointing nevertheless, and not a good look, right?
Yeah, it honestly not the best look. I honestly thought so. Without knowing anything about their supply chain operations, you and I could probably agree that it's not a manufacturing issue. This sounds like, you tell me, you're the supply chain guy. This sounds like it's a logistics issue.
100% logistics issue, and I haven't been able to kind of find out the root of the problem. I did hear a few things. One thing I heard is that the Canadian shipment repeatedly missed its shipping window, which is that does not sound good, right? Because
so explain to a normal person like myself that what's what is a shipping window? What is missing it easy? Is it hard? Like, how does Equinox miss a shipping window multiple times?
Well, that part I don't know, but what I can tell you is you have a global release and you're shipping into, a few key markets. And just stepping back and comparing it to the Kickstarter release, you're shipping individual packages to thousands of customers.
Right.
So if you miss, 10 packages, 10% of packages are delayed or 25%, whatever that number is, like that's the kind of percent of the market that you're impacting, but it'll go out a few days later and it'll kind of like continue flowing through the supply chain, through the global logistics chain, right? But for a global retail release, you have a big shipment that's going to a specific market, US, Canada, and it's like that's the one thing that's going to serve the whole market, right? So that shipment, it's got to get out by a certain time. It's going to be going likely over the ocean on a big shipping ship, right? And that takes a long time to get from Europe to North America, and you got to get it on the boat on time so that it's moving and it gets here for release. And for it to, whatever happened, not make it on that boat repeatedly to make its way here, I don't know how that happens multiple times, right? Like you're dealing with a global release. Yeah. It's on everybody's radar, right? Like US has got to ship by X cutoff, Canada's got to ship by X cutoff, and for that to happen multiple times, I don't know what could be going on there, but definitely some sort of major issue that they're going to have to resolve, right? Like this cannot happen, again for ongoing releases.
Yeah, it seems like production is not an issue because, as you mentioned earlier, like majority of the market did get their retail boxes.
And production's been done, right?
And production's been done, and they've had print runs, and as we discussed, right, like from a manufacturing standpoint, like they have that infrastructure there. To me, it sounds like they were supposed to deliver the product to the shipping ports, right? And windows were missed multiple times. So this is almost the equivalent of scheduling a Purolator or FedEx pickup and you not putting the product out for Purolator or FedEx, but obviously on a grand scale, which I think it's a little bit disappointing. And, I don't know what Equinox's approach has been. Support for Canada might not be as high for other regions. Maybe it was just the prioritization issues.
Yeah, smaller market.
Smaller market, but still unfortunate, right? And I think for me, it's like, I think it's with any new TCG release, I think like for the most part, it's been a success. But what could have Equinox done to have mitigated this issue, even if they couldn't have fixed the logistics problem? I think better communication.
For sure, yeah.
Because we're literally finding out, a few days.
Yeah, it was like a week before, which like if you have a major logistical disruption like that, you're not finding out a week before, right? Like you're especially a missed shipping window, like you know way ahead of time. So like that could have been communicated much better. We were scheduling events, right? I mean, stores all across Canada were scheduling events and like anticipating that everything's on track, and to find out pretty much last minute, that's part of like the disappointment too.
Yeah,
right?
it's a huge communication issue more than, in my opinion, a supply chain issue, right? Like, if you can't make certain deadlines, if you're cutting it close, play it safe and say, hey, look, we're going to move it to this date because this is a day that we know that we're going to be able to make for sure. Granted, I think we're both aware that we don't know the full situation.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you can meet U.S. release dates, if you can meet, European release dates, like we're a global economy nowadays. Like it's not like 10, 20 years ago where shipping product from, across the sea is, monumentally more difficult. Obviously, barring any sort of strikes, catastrophes, and whatnot, which, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think.
Yeah, supply chain world's kind of leveled out from the COVID era where there was a lot of delays and stuff like
bottlenecks.
Everybody's adapted. So Yeah, shouldn't have happened.
So where do we, you know, where do we go from here, kind of as a store in terms of our approach to Altered?
Yes, I think first of all, the people that have been anticipating Altered, you know, since Kickstarter or somewhere in between Kickstarter, they got hooked and they've been really kind of like committing into just everything leading into the release. And um, those people are, I don't think you're going to change your mind. I kind of think of it like politics in a sense, right? Like once you're kind of set one way, you're set on Altered. Okay, there might be a 2-3 week delay, whatever, like it comes out, it's going to fade away, you're going to be in. I think what it affects most is kind of those people in the middle. Maybe, they kind of stumbled on it and they're like, oh, there's a release coming up, I'm going to check it out, but then it gets delayed and like you move on to the next thing, kind of like we talked about in our first video, right? You got to capture that like initial demand as much as you can. We might be trying to pull people in to Altered, right? That it wasn't on their radar initially, but you invite them to a pre-release event. Okay, they schedule it in. You contact them, hey, okay, never mind, like it's gonna happen a week later. They work around it. Then again, you push it out, right? You might lose that interest, right? So those people in the middle, I think, is who it's really impacting the most. And just to my point about if that happened in the US, that could have been a huge impact, right?
Yeah.
In Canada, the reality is we're a smaller market, but I think there is still really strong support, especially coming out of Quebec, right? There's that French connection where,
Yeah.
people in Quebec, that's, I think, in Canada, like a lot of the support is actually coming out of there. So, yeah, I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's good that you mention it. That again, Canada's a small market, but I don't think necessarily small is bad. Especially in the Toronto area, we're actually hyper competitive in the
Yeah.
TCG space. So we're talking about from a playability standpoint, from a competitive scene, the Canadian players like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, like we have a lot of top players relative to our population size attending these events, right? And the hope was that the game was going to be accessible, and I think they did again create accessibility through the playability of the game being a fun game to play, easy to pick up, low floor, potentially high ceiling. Accessibility in the literal sense, in the physical sense of getting product to your customers, maybe not so much. So here we are, kind of disseminating the news to our community, and honestly, like, it's not a good feeling, right? Like we represent our communities. Our communities have been let down, and we are seeing a bit of a fading interest, right? To your point, all the people kind of in that in between spot, we're losing a little bit of traction there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that they could have maybe done to at least ease the issue a bit is if you can rush some product into the market, you don't need all your product to be there for release day, right? Even if they could have rushed some product in, get at least one case to kind of every store that's signed on, which I don't think would be too many, right? Like even if you have 100 stores, that's 100 cases. Like just ship it express, whatever you got to do. Get each store one case so that we could at least, keep the events on track, keep people engaged, and, participate in that global launch. And maybe people can't buy, full booster boxes on release, but at least you can kind of roll it out that way, and then the product, the rest of the product can roll into the market, and maybe 2-3 weeks later people are getting their booster boxes and stuff like that. But I think that would have been a good solution, and maybe they'll still try to do something like that and pull the date back. But that would have been my thought, to kind of try and
Mitigate the downside impact of that, right? But
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, as players and as stores, right, we also have to be understanding that this is Equinox's first time doing a TCG, even though that they have the infrastructure of their board game space, even though they're not new to the industry of hobbies and games, they are ultimately new to TCG, right? So, the people that are in charge of the supply chain and operations, kind of meeting a street date is ultimately very, very important for TCG.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that, this is a little bit of a test run so that once season 2 kind of comes around, everyone's kind of on the same page, everyone's getting product at the same time. And, season 1 will just be something that, we look back and be, haha, look at that little blip. But, regardless, I think you and I are both excited still for Altered.
Yeah.
We still plan on supporting, the videos that we have in queue to talk about the game, talk about the cards. And I think where we come from here is we're cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, like these things happen, right? You're obviously going to be disappointed when it happens, but it's not the first time in the TCG world. Even recently, there's been multiple delays. Most recently, I can think of Pokemon, Digimon, both having delays. So it happens, but for a new set launch, it just kind of magnifies that disappointment, right? Yeah. So what can you do? What can you do?
So we want to hear what your thoughts are. If you were kind of planning on playing Altered and maybe your launch event had to get canceled. For those who are already playing Altered, let us know how it is. Let us know how your launch events are. We always have our discussions going on in our Discord. Links are below. And stay in touch with us. We're going to continually be releasing these videos diving into Altered, talking about a wide variety of topics. And this is what I would consider as part of the fun and enjoyment, is kind of navigating this new territory, new unexplored lands that we think it's going to happen a certain way, and doesn't always pan out that way.
Yep. So more starter deck videos to come next. We just wanted to kind of talk about live update in that sense. So see you guys there.
And please subscribe so it gives us motivation to keep on making these videos. Thanks.